Welcome back to the Growth Over Goals podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Montgomery, and it's good to be back. You know, it's always good to be on and to have a guest to share a great conversation with. But, you know, I feel like the guests who are really impacting this world and doing it in a way that isn't oriented all around like business and money. Like once in a while you get a guest, you're just doing good. You're reaching people in a really impactful way. You're doing it for the right reasons, with the right spirit, the right posture. And today I have one of those guests. And, you know, we were just talking offline that, you know, like God honors, I think, humility and honors people who just choose to do good. And it's so apparent to me that one door after another in this person's life has been opened as a result of their humility and the good that they continue to put out into this world. My guest today is a two-time author. Her recent book was a #1 new release on Amazon. Pretty cool. Chasing the Bright Side. It's out. Go check it out. Order it. She's an entrepreneur. She actually founded Headbands of Hope. We're going to talk about this amazing organization today that does so much for young kids who are struggling. We're gonna talk about that. She also has a book out called Create Your Bright Ideas. Let me tell you, she's created some really bright ideas. She's a creative. She's an entrepreneur. She's a speaker. She recently started a new organization that helps women become dynamic public speakers. We're going to talk about the Mic Drop workshop today. We became friends because of our mutual friend, dear friend, Brad Lomenick. God bless you, Brad. Jess Ekstrom. Such an honor to have you on the show today. Thanks for being here.
Man, I got like lost in your intro. I was like, is that me? That sounds great.
Well, you gotta quit like doing all this great stuff, you know, and then the intro doesn't need to be that long. But seriously, like you have just had this amazing journey and so inspiring. Like if you stopped now, I think you'd have 5 more books to write. But we were talking offline. I'm like, I think you're just getting started, Jess. So like, I want to go back and I want to talk about like childhood and the early days. You have this crazy story from like growing up and there's this experience while you're camping with your family that gives birth to this, you know, this amazing new idea. And by the way, if you're listening to this and you're a young person with an idea, like I just want you to know that this podcast episode is for you. Like, yeah, I just think Jess is going to speak to you in a really unique way today. And even if you're not a young person, you might feel like you're at the end of your professional journey or like maybe your best days are behind you. I don't know. I think Jess is going to speak to that person too. So heavy note-taking time. Jess Ekstrom, thanks for being with us. Take us back to the early days. Growing up with your family, you loved to camp, you were big into family, and there's some really cool things that happened to you at a young age.
Yeah, you know, I was not the overachieving kid, which is crazy today because you can kind of see that intro or like look me up and it's like, oh man, she's doing some stuff. And as a kid, I was never like, my sister was the overachiever. She was captain of the cross country team, student body president. You know, I was known as Heather Ekstrom's sister, like everywhere that I went. And, you know, it wasn't until my dad, he started his company when I was in middle school. And I remember, you know, he had a 9-to-5 job and he one day came home from work and said that he wanted to start his business and wanted our support and that things were going to change around here. And I remember like, I could not have been less interested. I was like, oh, I don't know what this, you know, what this means. What is entrepreneurship? Like I had a very different reaction than my mom and my sister who were like hugging him and so happy for him. But then I watched him turn our upstairs bathroom into his office, which he was like the OG work from home, you know, pre-COVID in the mid 90s. But he turned his upstairs bathroom into his office, started this company that he believed in. Eventually, my mom started working for his business, and then they fast forward, they actually sold it and then moved into an RV, and they're now like camp hosts and travel around, which is awesome. But amazing. I remember, you know, 8 months into his business, we were on a camping trip as a family. That was like our thing, clearly, if they moved into an RV. And I was getting out my headphones to jam out to my Walkman because I'm aging myself. And that's how it was MP4 players, pre-iPods.
Let's go.
And I kept getting frustrated that my headphones cords kept getting tangled in a knot. And I was like, Dad, these headphone cords should just roll up so they never have to get tangled again. And then, of course, I was like, I'll just invent that like you invented your business. And I remember he sat me down like pretty serious, and he's a goofy guy. So I was like, well, what's wrong? And he looked at me and he was like, Jess, that's something that is already, been invented. But I really, really want you to keep thinking that way. Like, keep looking at the world through the lens that you can fix it. And it was really like a light switch moment for me on that camping trip. I just, instead of saying like, I'm going to start a business or I'm going to be an entrepreneur, I started looking for problems. And today I like to call them, like in my kids' book, Create Your Bright Ideas, it's like, find those itches. And then how can you be the one to scratch it? So, my first business, like giving headbands to kids with cancer at Headbands of Hope, that was like this itch and a scratch. And now today, Mic Drop Workshop, helping women become professional speakers, like that was a problem and solution. So I like to call it inspiration from frustration. And if we can all take frustration and figure out ways to be inspired by it to change, even on a small scale, like not even starting a business, maybe it's a policy, maybe it's injustice, maybe it's, someone being left out at a, table somewhere, like just find ways to be inspired to fix it.
Hey, I would love for you to speak about early stage challenge. And you had some challenges, even like from a family perspective.
Yeah.
That
challenge is a light word. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you mind like talking about this? Because I think this is fascinating.
Yeah.
That your family had to navigate this.
Yeah. So everyone buckle up if you're listening. If you're driving, maybe pull over. No, I'm just joking. But
for real.
Yeah. So what Jordan's referring to is something that I, for years, tried to compartmentalize as something that like wasn't me, that this was just something that happened to my family. I'm going to remove myself and try to have as much distance from it as possible because it felt so unfathomable. But I slowly started over the years, realized how much sometimes our hardest moments can shape who we are. And maybe you don't see it at the time that there's a silver lining, but it starts to form. So when I was in high school, and I'll say that, we grew up very privileged, and it was something that like, my parents were really good at keeping us grounded but I realized that we had a very privileged childhood and still to this day. And around my senior year in high school, I learned that not only did my family like lose all of their money, which was one thing, that it was lost because of a man named Bernie Madoff, who was the biggest financial fraud in history, stealing over $65 billion in his Ponzi scheme. And plot twist, Bernie Madoff is my mom's uncle, so my great uncle. So our family just got the rug pulled out from us as amongst so many other victims. So not only did we now have no money, but then we were also in the midst of a press media fire. And did the family know all of this stuff that was just like, what is going on? You're like watching headlines and watching the news, and eventually like watching Robert De Niro play your uncle like on TV, and just thinking like, this is not my family. This is not, I feel like I'm watching someone else. But it was, and again, I feel like I'm jumping to the good, but that's because this is a podcast and you kind of have to keep it moving. But it took me 11 years to realize that like, we have these things in our life that are uncontrollable experiences, and it can be as small as like your flight is delayed, or it's really hot outside, or your neighbor's dog is barking when, you're trying to record a podcast or whatever it might be. All of those are experiences, but our story is how we internalize and then respond to our experiences. So I couldn't change what the horrific thing that my uncle did or what happened with my family. I couldn't change the experience, but maybe I could help rewrite the story. And so I mentioned, earlier how I was never like the overachiever, never the kid going above and beyond. But if I can really connect the dots back to that moment, that was when I was like, we have one life. We never know what's going to happen. We never know what's right around the corner. I want to make it matter. I want to make it mean something. And I also don't want to just live for the dollar, because I see the greed and what that did to so many people. And so it really was this transformative experience that turned a completely different story.
Amazing. Like, I have so many questions and we have not enough time just about that one experience. Like, I just can't imagine the different sides to that, with it being family and the loss. And then to your point, like, did the family know? Did they not? Like that must have been heavy just as a young kid, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you were in high school.
And knowing that, like, we all were just as surprised as everyone else, but the media accusing, like, well, of course, they knew. And even just sitting in class in school and learning about it. And there literally being like debates about the family, and no one knew. Like, I wasn't, telling anyone. And because my last name is Ekstrom, it's not Madoff, but just, it was, like we see even like headlines today of news, and it's just like, you kind of file it away in a box in your brain that's like, that'll never happen to me.
Yeah.
But once you realize that, like, you're not immune from anything, like anything is possible, but anything is possible, good or bad. Like, you could start guitar lessons tomorrow and be touring with Coldplay in a year from now. Like, there's just so much unpredictability in life. And that's why I love the name of this podcast, of Growth Over Goals, because like, I feel like goals are so singular and they don't leave room for possibility. And there's like so much possibility, again, good or bad. So if there's possibility for bad in the future, then appreciate the good. And if you're in the bad, know that the good is coming.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's it. I'm glad that you brought that up. It's not something I talk about often, but we all have things in our closet, we all have things that,
all of us. Yeah.
Share
challenge.
Yeah.
Yep. But I think it's awesome when somebody can look at somebody like you, who's clearly had success and impact and is doing so much for so many, who has also had to overcome. Because it'd be easy to look at you and say, well, she's probably had, a great start and no challenge. And so the challenge doesn't stop there. I don't want to fast forward like too quickly in your story. But you create this business, you have this idea. And then again, there's like this theme of like loss, and someone takes advantage of you. Like, so can we go there, and you can share as much or as little as you want
let's
to.
I like how we're starting with the low light reel, before the highlight reel.
It's going to get good. I promise.
No,
it gets
but
really good.
I agree. Like, my biggest pet peeve is when you're like hearing an entrepreneur's story and it's like, well, I had this idea, and the next day I just am in Macy's. I can't keep it in stock. And it's like, no, that's not how it happens. And if we believe that that's the narrative of success, then we're going to turn away at the first sign of failure,
So true. So true.
Yeah, I love airing the dirty laundry of how I got here. So, so I had this idea to start Headbands of Hope. I had been interning at the Make-A-Wish Foundation and saw that a lot of kids that were losing their hair to chemotherapy really loved to wear headbands as opposed to wigs or hats, but no one out there was providing headbands. And so I think that's also like a key point here of, you don't become an entrepreneur like the moment you start a business or whatever it might be. It's like you become an entrepreneur the moment you decide to create what you wish existed. So we've all had those moments, like when you're looking for something that you can't find, or you're like, God, I wish that, my shoelace would do this, or I wish there was a nail polish that did that, or we all have those moments where we wish that something existed. And so I feel like that was the moment where I became an entrepreneur, was when I wished that something existed. I was looking for organizations to find headbands for these kids and couldn't find any. And so I started Headbands of Hope. For every headband sold, we donate one to a child with an illness. And, I was as scrappy as they came. Like, I bribed people with like turkey Jimmy John sandwiches to build a website. Like it was just a college student budget because I was 18 at the time. And then I got connected with this manufacturer to create the headbands. Long story short, the manufacturer ended up being fraudulent and took the money that was a loan from my dad to start this business. And we had wired her the money to start the first round of production, and we had never heard from them again. And
Crazy.
It was just one of those moments where you were just like, maybe this is a sign. It's really it's easy to jump to interpreting like your wounds as your worth. It's like in really self-identifying with failure. And that was definitely what was happening at the time. I was like, well, if this fails, then therefore I'm a failure. But, I talked about this in the beginning, like when you have an idea or something that you truly feel like is solving a problem, it feels like it's almost an itch between your shoulder blades that's driving you crazy all day that you just can't scratch, just become possessed by it. And I felt so passionate that this was it, like this needed to happen for these kids, that I needed to figure out a solution. And there was actually this interesting study the Harvard Business Review published around willpower, and how like for years they thought willpower was gas in the tanks, like, a depleted resource. Like this is how much willpower you have in the day. And then when it's out, it's out. But what this study found is that willpower is actually more of an emotion that you feel rather than a depleted resource. And so that emotion is, whether we're happy or sad, is always triggered by something. And so that trigger for the willpower emotion is purpose. Like we've all felt that before, where, like you wake up early on a Sunday before your family to like start working on this idea. It's not because you have extra energy. It's Sunday morning, you want to relax. It's because you have willpower. It's because you have purpose. So whenever you find yourself kind of getting taken and like possessed with this idea, it's probably because there's purpose behind it. So I got this like $300 grant from my school that was giving it away to students starting businesses. And I bought 2 different types of headbands from the supplier on Etsy that I found in Bismarck, North Dakota, and put those 2 headbands on my website, April 25th, 2012. And now we've donated over 2 million headbands. We're sold in Kohl's. You can, we do NBA, WNBA headbands now. And we've donated to every hospital in America in 22 countries. So I think about that time a lot where, you kind of have that fork in the road, left or right, after a failure. And you just learn that like success isn't the absence of failure. It's just a very natural part of it.
That is so true. So true. And I love John Maxwell always talks about this idea of failing forward. And, we've often said like fail fast, fail well. And I think you failed well. I think, there's this whole idea that like adversity builds character. And I don't know who said it. Maybe it was John, but it's like, I don't think that's true. Like there's more to that. That's an incomplete sentence. The reality is like adversity builds character if we allow it to. But it's still a choice. It's a choice to keep going. It's a choice to respond the right way. So like your story and what happened with Headbands of Hope is such an inspiration. We're about to take a turn to something else that you're really, really passionate about, which is Mic Drop Workshop. But before we do that, like, is there anything else that you want people to know about like just that journey with Headbands of Hope?
Yeah, staying on the topic of failure, I always like to share. It's like the number one quote whenever I speak on stages. Actually, I got this DM a couple years ago from this woman who was in the audience, and she got it tattooed on her arm and wanted to get it in my handwriting. But the quote that I share is that failure will always feel better than regret. And so even though we don't think that like failure doesn't have to be celebrated, I think that's like it's a really like, it's kind of like toxic positivity where you're just like, oh, congrats, you failed. It's like, no, it doesn't feel good. But if you can know that failure will always feel better than regret, and you'll have more information than you did before, like failure, it can be research. And if you are curious enough about the problem, then failures can actually give you a lot of information. So anytime I'm like, dang, I wish that it had a different outcome. It's like, well, I have the information. Failure will always feel better than regret.
It's one of the best quotes, one of the best things that's been shared on our podcast. That is so good
Oh,
and so
good.
true. Because I
Good.
do think we live in this culture where people want to like celebrate it in almost this sort of cheesy, inauthentic way, right? And I love
Right.
what you said about it doesn't have to feel good and we don't need to celebrate it. But to
No.
know its right place and to know that it feels better than regret is
Yeah.
powerful.
Like I'd
Thanks for
rather
sharing.
succeed, but I'll take failure before regret. Yeah.
Come on. It's so good. Okay, this is a great segue because offline, I told you before we started recording, I'm like, you remind me of this person and maybe you're best friends. And turns out you're good friends.
Yeah.
But it's more than just like your journey and the good that you put out into the world. It's like your style and the way that you connect and operate. And she was my first podcast guest, Liz Bohannon. And
Love her.
Liz and you also share this love of speaking and influencing. And you even sort of communicate the same way. So if there's anyone listening that knows Liz Bohannon, shout out Liz. We love you.
Yes.
I feel like you might be related. Jess Ekstrom and Liz Bohannon might actually be like related somehow.
Such a compliment. I told you I'm going to text her after this and say, Jordan thinks we're sisters.
It's crazy. But one of the things that you share in common is the stage. Like you're on stages all across the country, and you're not just on stages as a speaker, you're also helping other women with the stage, to get on the stage, to develop as a speaker, as a communicator. Like, I want to know, where did this idea come from, Jess? And then how have you worked to build it? And then I have some more questions about where the business sits today, but take us back to the beginning of where that idea came from.
Well, now that you all are, equipped on my life story, but Headbands of Hope, it's like, I almost think that Headbands of Hope is like a case study for what speaking can do. Because I, didn't have money to start the business. And the way that I was able to scale the business without getting outside funding was through speaking. And it really started by accident. I was literally begging college professors for like 5 minutes before class started. I was like, let me just get up in front of them and tell them what I'm doing. And like, maybe they'll buy a headband. Like, it was pretty pathetic, but
that's amazing.
And then I, started to say like, well, what if I tied it into the lesson? What if I could talk about Headbands of Hope and tie it into something that they can take away with? And so I started to kind of learn storytelling isn't enough. It's like, how do you tell your story in a way that helps people in their story? And so once I started kind of catching on that Headbands of Hope is not what I'm here to talk about. Headbands of Hope is the example of a greater lesson of like how we can build a brighter future and how we all have the ability to do that. And so I started to get asked to speak. I remember the first time I got like a email from Marshall University. I feel like I need to like frame it on my wall, but it was like, what are your rates? And I was like, hold up. You mean that I can get paid to do this? This is crazy. So I started speaking a ton at colleges, and that's how I really got my like speaking legs. And then, it was the way that that scaled Headbands to a multi-million-dollar business like fairly quickly, because I would reinvest that money into the business. I was getting exposure on these stages. And it was just the perfect like yin and yang for it. And then as I started to kind of evolve and grow out of the college market, speaking on larger stages and corporations and, leadership events, sales, I just realized one blaring itch, which was so many times. And I'm sure you've seen this, Jordan, like I was the only woman in the lineup at a conference. And I kid you not, there was multiple times where I always get on the phone with the event before I come. And I always ask him a question of, what was it about me that you wanted to bring me to speak? Like, what, is there a certain thing you wanted me to hit on? What was it that you wanted me to do? Multiple times it was, we needed a woman. Like, we just have never had, I don't think they even knew my name. It was just like, I see that you are a woman and I see that you have speaking experience and we need that. Like I've had people say that they've had negative feedback reviews because there wasn't women on stages. And I was just like, okay, something's going on here. So I just kind of did a quick, I didn't realize it at the time, but just like tested it. I rented out the first floor of a restaurant here in Raleigh, and I put up an Eventbrite for women. It was like $20, like Thursday night. I'll bring wine and cheese. If you like are interested in how to become a paid public speaker, let me like tell you everything that I've learned. And I mean, it was totally packed and amazing women in there with incredible stories. And people were like, you should record this. I want to watch it again. Or my cousin in, Iowa wants to see it. And so then I was like very new to the idea of an online course. But I recorded it and put all these contracts and modules, and basically like, how do I get someone from, oh my gosh, I have a story, what is public speaking, to first paid gig, without any kind of like, but what do I do if they say this? Or how do I create a signature talk? So that started Mic Drop Workshop. And then now we've helped thousands of women become professional speakers and just trusted, valued thought leaders. And it's been the most incredible experience. And like last thing I'll say about it is that, for a while, and I'm sure that you feel this, Jordan, it's like at the beginning of my career, I thought that my success was like directly correlated to like how much I could do. How many books can I write? How many stages can I be on? How many things can I get? That is exhausting. And it's also like very limiting. I'm only one person and can only do so much and only have so much to say. When I changed my business model to like not just the success of like my reach and my speaking and how many stages I can speak on, to how much can I help women in like underrepresented groups do this thing, it has just quadrupled the potential and the success I can have because it's not in my hands anymore. And I feel like one of the biggest measures of like, am I doing the right thing is like, will this matter after I'm gone, and it will. And so Mic Drop Workshop has just been the best next chapter that, again, I never knew existed.
That is like, it's just so crazy that you share that, because in being a speaker, like I share this with you, Jess, and traveling to different events, and you take a stage or you look at the lineup and your heart just kind of sinks, right? Like it is an underrepresented group, and it's a real problem. I think in multiple industries and at the different events across the country, and you're helping to solve that. I want to get a little bit practical with you, because there's some people listening, there's some women listening, who are like, hey, like I want to speak. Like I'm like thinking of a half a dozen people right now that I'm like, we got to connect them to Jess. How do they get involved? What does that look like? Like, if you don't mind, just for a couple minutes, shedding some light on like, what is that process? What does it look like to be involved with Mic Drop Workshop? Yeah.
So, and we also have, if you're also listening to this and you're like, I never want to give a TED Talk, I never want to do this, I also have something for you. So you can go to micdropworkshop.com, and we have a ton of free resources, a free training, we send out a gig email every Wednesday with like gig opportunities. And so start on Mic Drop Workshop. And then if it's something that you want to do, you can enroll in our Mic Drop Workshop Foundations course. And you also join a community of women who are doing the same thing. And I'll tell you, like, I think the curriculum is great, but it's the community that is absolutely insane. These women are referring each other to opportunities, having meetups around the country. I mean, just like getting feedback on their websites, videos, titles, all of it. So it's been a really cool social experiment as well, because speaking, I mean, you know this better than everyone, speaking can be such a collaborative industry if you let it. So much of how people find me to speak is through other speakers, because if someone books you to speak, very rarely are they like, well, we're going to bring you back every single year. And it sometimes that happens, and that's great. But most of the time they want to bring new people in. So if you can have people that you refer, and refer people who might not be like the top, people of the world, but have something really great to say. That itself is such like allyship when it comes to lifting people up for opportunity. And so that's really
Yes.
also the model of Mic Drop Workshop, is not just to educate and equip women to become professional speakers themselves, but how to set up a cycle and a system to where they get more women on stages after they speak, because that's, I feel like, the ticket. But if one thing that we found since doing this since 2018 is like, there's women out there that are like, I have no interest in becoming a professional speaker. I don't want to get paid to do it. I just want to get better at speaking for my job. I want to be able to give a presentation. I want to be able to lead a meeting. I want to be able to just like talk to a room of people, or even handle Q&A, after I say something. And so I have teamed up with this amazing woman, Christine Sickles. She's the CMO at Mic Drop Workshop too, but she has a 20 plus corporate career and very high up. And so she knows what goes on in the corporate world. And so we're creating a program called Mic Drop Workforce, where we go into companies and help train their entry to mid-level women to become more powerful presenters and communicators, just to get better at work. But I think speaking is like one of those things, and I know you feel this too. It's just like, if you want to advocate for a stop sign in your neighborhood, or if you need to talk to your kid's principal, or like, it just is the single tool that it unlocks so much opportunity no matter where you are. So it'll never be a wasted skill at any point in your life.
That is so good. So wise. Like, I love what you said about the industry being collaborative if you allow it to be. I think for so many people it's not, but it could be, and it should be. Like, if we believe in adding more value and putting the right people out front to lead and influence, like, it should be that way. I also think what you're doing, Jess, is so empowering, because I think there's some people even listening today who are like, well, I don't know if anybody would listen, or I don't really know if my message is strong enough. Like, I think there can be some of that imposter syndrome. I would love if you're willing, like, because I'm sure you're talking about this in Mic Drop Workshop, but like, what advice would you give? And maybe even to men listening too. Like, there's a lot of men, I'm sure, that are like, man, I feel the same way. Like, any just advice that you would offer to folks who are feeling that way, but maybe don't know if they're besides, hey, like, enroll in Mic Drop Workshop, right? That's part of the advice. But beyond that, like, if you're just sharing and somebody's driving down the road today and they're thinking about the message that lives inside of them, what would you say to that person?
Well, I'll say that there's so many, of course, like tangible tactics. I could get into posture, eye contact, voice inflection. None of that matters if you don't have the right mindset going in. And so I'm going to tell you like one mindset shift that you can all, men and women, like everywhere, take with you today in every kind of speaking situation, whether it's professionally or at work, whatever it might be. So I like to call this shift going from a spotlight speaker to a lighthouse speaker. So oftentimes our nerves come from the perception that we feel like we might have. What are they going to think of me? Are they going to like me? Am I doing a good job? What if I fail? But that is coming from like a self-serving mentality of like, how will I look up there? So a spotlight speaker is there to show the light on them. It feels like it's like a performance. Like, I'm here to tell you my story about how I built my empire. But if you can shift this from a spotlight to a lighthouse, shine that light out and say, actually, I am here in total service of the audience, and I'm here as a guide to you. Even if that means not being the expert, even if that means like if you're in a presentation and you don't know the answer to something, you're not going to make it up on the spot. You're going to say, actually, I'm going to get back to you on that. Or even if that means you're a professional speaker and you have to tell a story about how you lost a loan from your dad when you were starting a business because it teaches the audience a greater lesson. I'm not telling a story about how I got on the Today Show or all these things that are there to make me look like I'm in the spotlight. So shifting from a performance spotlight mindset to more of a giver's lighthouse mindset can change tone, look and feel of your entire talk. And it makes it more effective in terms of value, but it also like relinquishes those nerves in the beginning because it's like, it's not about you. Who cares if you trip and fall because it's not about you. It'll make the audience laugh. So that's great, you know?
Yes.
So I
Yes.
think that like shifting from a spotlight to a lighthouse is like, you got to do it. And it's a simple thing that'll have a really big impact.
I love that. And so many of us have missed it, and so many are still missing it when it comes to Spotlight Lighthouse. Like
Yeah.
another way to say that would be like me focused and you focused, but
Yes.
you said it so
Totally.
much better and so much more powerfully. Um, I would love to, if you're willing, if we can get
Yeah.
like 2 minutes of like, because again, I want to give people a teaser to Mic Drop Workshop. Like that was so good. That was worth, like, if you listen to this whole podcast and somehow you are tuned out for, like, if there's one part that I will remember, that you've dropped so much wisdom, that piece of this episode might be my favorite piece of the episode.
Oh,
Lighthouse
good.
Spotlight. Because I think, it's true, Jess, like not just for people who are speaking publicly or on a stage. That's just true of like everyday communication. So
Yeah.
if you're willing to share like a tactic or two with the time that we have left as we land this plane, and you think about
Yeah.
like, hey, if you want to be a more effective communicator, here's one thing I would focus on or pay
Mhm.
attention to. What else would you just give our listeners today, if you're
Yeah.
willing, around
Yeah.
like tactics or something to think about?
Yeah. So one thing that I like to share that is like a very, again, simple thing that you can do today is getting clear on what you want to be known for. Because I like to call this like, don't be a Cheesecake Factory speaker. No hate to the Cheesecake Factory, but like if you go
That's so
somewhere
good.
and they're like, we have Alfredo, we have sushi, we have enchiladas. It's like, well, what are you good at? And so figure out what it is that you want to be known for. Think about like, what do people come to you for advice for? What's the thing that you're comfortable being attached to for like 3 to 5 years? What's that thing that you want to be known for? And then package it up in a speaker statement. And so in Mic Drop Workshop, we have templates for this, but this speaker statement is like, hi, my name is blank and I help audiences blank. So what is the thing that you help audiences do? Not, hi, my name is blank and I speak about blank or I do this, because again, that's spotlight focus, not lighthouse focus. I help audiences blank. And then once you have that speaker statement, publish it, put it on your LinkedIn, put it on your website, put it on your email signature, because like the first step in kind of in getting speaking opportunities is getting clear on what you want to be known for and that transformation that you want to have on the audience. But also you have to publish it. No one's like sitting there wondering, do you think that person is a speaker? I'm not sure. No, you have to name it and claim it and like put it out there. And don't worry about like having everything perfect beforehand. Like you just have to get clear on it, name it and claim it, and then you can start doing the work.
So good. I want to record 3 more episodes and just talk about this.
Yes.
By the way, I believe your workshop, I believe Mic Drop Workshop is not just for early stage communicators or those who want to get into the industry. As someone who's been in this industry for a decade, like I'm hearing you talking, I'm like, ooh, that's good. Ooh, I need to work on that. Like, oh, that's something I could pay attention to. So check it out, Mic Drop Workshop. We're going to add a link in the show notes. Is there anything else you want people to know about Mic Drop Workshop? Of course, there's a ton more, but anything else that you want to just leave our listeners with, Jess?
Yeah. I think one thing I like to let people know is like, so much, I think, of the problem with speaking in the industry being, more male dominated is women feeling like they have to check all of the boxes in order to have a chance. There's so much research around imposter syndrome and women not applying for jobs that they don't feel qualified for. But speaking is less about information and more about transformation. And we all have a story and a message that can transform someone. So don't wait till you have all the information, because you never will. And I also really don't love the idea of like speaking being an expert, because if you're a good speaker, you're still always a student. You're always learning. And so I just hate that imposter syndrome is usually the thing that stands between someone feeling like they can do this. We all have amazing and powerful stories, and give yourself a chance. You never know what's going to happen.
So coming into this, I'm going to share something with our audience that you and I talked about before we hit record.
Yeah.
You had said to me like, hey, the thing I'm really like passionate about and working on right now is Mic Drop Workshop. And so like, I'm good talking about Headbands of Hope, but just maybe not like for the entire conversation.
Entire time. Yeah.
Because that's what people want to talk about, right? Because it is such an inspiring story, like that has so many layers to it. And in my mind, I'm thinking like, okay, I got it. Like, I get it. Like, we're going to for sure talk about Mic Drop Workshop. But confession, I'm like, wait a minute, but Headbands of Hope is like this crazy story. And I've got so many questions about Headbands of Hope. And so I'm thinking like, I don't know how could the conversation get better than that? And I want to let you know, like better than that. Like this Mic Drop Workshop content and conversation is fascinating. And it's fascinating because I think it's inclusive and relevant. Again, I don't think this is for people who just want to speak on a stage. What you just shared, like the 2 or 3 things that you gave us are inclusive and relevant to anyone who wants to work with people. Like if you're in the people business, if you want to build better relationships, if you want to understand how to build trust and rapport, like what you just talked about is universal, transferable across generations, industries. I don't care if you're a man, a woman, like Jess, so good. I'm so excited for you in this journey that you're on. So important. And want you to know that like, just would love to be in support of that and help you with that in any way that we can. So
I appreciate that. I feel like we were brought together for a reason, and I'm so glad that we were. And I have to say that even though Mic Drop Workshop is for women, it takes men and their support to make changes. And I love that you are a part of that and in our corner. So thank you for that. Yeah.
Well, here to champion these efforts. I go back to like what you said about when you were a kid, you know, like you identify a problem and your dad said, hey, keep seeing the world that way. And you're viewing that world that way. And because of that, you're making a difference. And you just made a difference over the last 40 minutes with our audience and our community. And for that, we want to say thank you. So thank you for being with us today.
Thanks, everyone.
God bless. This has been another episode of the Growth Over Goals podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Montgomery. Thank you for listening. Thanks for being here. If you found any value in this episode, I would love it if you would rate, review, subscribe to this podcast in an effort that we might move our mission of impact forward. I also want to say thank you to our producers, John Choate and James Roth of Storyline Multimedia, for all of the work that they do behind the scenes to make this podcast go. Be well, be great. Have a wonderful day.